Officer Mitchell believed he was the law. His badge, his uniform, and his authority weren't just symbols. They were an extension of his very being. Over the years, he had molded himself into an enforcer of his own brand of justice, deciding who belonged and who didn't. Rarely had anyone dared to question him, let alone challenge him. But this bright, ordinary afternoon was about to shatter his illusion of control. The sun blazed down on the asphalt, waves of heat rising as Mitchell patrolled the parking lot with a practiced eye. His job today was routine, but routine never stopped him from making his presence known. He thrived on it. He enjoyed watching people scramble under his scrutiny. That's when he saw it. A sleek black SUV glided into a prime parking spot near the entrance. Mitchell's interest piqued immediately. The vehicle was pristine, the kind that whispered wealth and status. The driver's door swung open, and out stepped a tall, poised woman dressed in a sharply tailored navy blue pantsuit. Elena Carter. From the moment she stepped out, she exuded control. Her shoulders were squared, her steps measured and assured, and the way she carried her leather briefcase suggested she was someone important, someone who expected to be here. Mitchell narrowed his eyes. He didn't like what he saw. It wasn't that she had done anything wrong, at least, not yet. It was the way she moved, the way she carried herself, as if she had every right to be there, as if she was above answering to people like him. Something about her confidence, her sheer, unbothered demeanor, rubbed him the wrong way. She needed a reminder of who was in charge. Straightening his belt, he strode toward her, his boots striking the pavement with deliberate force. His presence was meant to be felt before he even spoke. "Ma'am," he called out, his voice sharp, authoritative. Elena turned mid-step, her expression composed, unreadable. "Yes?" "This is a restricted parking area," Mitchell announced, jerking his chin toward her SUV. "You can't park here. I need to see your ID and registration." Elena's brow furrowed slightly. She glanced around. There were no signs, no barriers, nothing to indicate this was anything but a normal parking lot. "Restricted?" she repeated, her tone polite yet firm. "I don't see any signage indicating that." Her calm response irritated Mitchell. He wasn't used to people, especially women, questioning his authority. "Don't argue with me," he snapped, taking a step closer. "I said it's restricted, and that's all you need to know. Either show me your ID, or I'll have your car towed." Elena tilted her head slightly, studying him. There was no fear in her gaze, only an unwavering confidence that made Mitchell feel strangely unsteady. "I'm parked legally," she said evenly, "and I don't believe I've done anything wrong. So tell me, officer, why exactly are you asking for my ID?" Mitchell felt his frustration spike. "Because I said so," he wanted to yell. Instead, his voice grew louder, harsher. "Stop wasting my time and hand it over." By now, a small crowd had begun to gather. People lingered nearby, pretending to check their phones while casting sidelong glances. Others openly watched, intrigued by the rising tension. A few even had their cameras out, recording the exchange in silent anticipation. Elena sighed, as if dealing with a minor inconvenience. "All right," she murmured, reaching into her jacket pocket. Mitchell's body tensed. His hand instinctively hovered near his holster. His pulse quickened. Was she about to pull a weapon? His breath caught as her hand emerged. But what she held wasn't a weapon. With a flick of her wrist, she flipped open a leather badge holder. The unmistakable golden emblem of the FBI gleamed in the afternoon sun. The murmurs in the crowd swelled. A few gasps rippled through the onlookers. "My name is Special Agent Elena Carter," she said firmly. Her voice carried a new weight, one that silenced even the whispers around them. "And you've just made a very serious mistake." Mitchell's world seemed to tilt. For a brief moment, he was frozen, his brain struggling to process what he was seeing. "FBI." His throat went dry. "As Special Agent," he stammered. His voice, once so full of power, now barely above a whisper. "Yes," Elena confirmed, her gaze sharp and unwavering. "And I suggest you think very carefully about how you proceed from here, officer." The onlookers murmured louder. Someone whispered, "She's FBI?" Another muttered, "Asterisk, he's in trouble now." Phones were raised higher, cameras capturing every second of Mitchell's unraveling confidence. His face burned. I didn't know, he managed, his voice barely holding together. Elena's expression remained unreadable, but her next words cut through him like a blade. That much is clear. Elena's sharp words hung in the air, slicing through Officer Mitchell's remaining confidence. His once firm posture faltered, and a bead of sweat rolled down his temple. The murmurs of the crowd grew louder, their eyes glued to the unfolding spectacle. Phones were still recording, capturing every second of his humiliation. That much is clear, Elena repeated, her voice steady and authoritative. But let me be perfectly clear, Officer Mitchell. Your approach was aggressive, unprofessional, and entirely unwarranted. You assumed I didn't belong here. Why is that? Mitchell swallowed hard, searching for an answer that wouldn't make him sound as bad as he already looked. I was just doing my job, he muttered weakly, avoiding her gaze. Elena took a step closer, her presence radiating an intensity that made Mitchell feel unbearably small. Your job, she said, voice laced with quiet force, is to serve and protect, not to harass and intimidate. I suggest you take a long, hard look at why you felt the need to single me out today. The weight of her words was suffocating. Mitchell had spent years throwing his authority around, never expecting to be held accountable. But now, under the scrutiny of dozens of recording eyes and a federal agent, his usual bravado had abandoned him. Before he could attempt a weak defense, the deep rumble of an approaching engine cut through the tension. A sleek black sedan pulled into the parking lot. Its tinted windows gleamed under the sun, and as it came to a smooth stop, the unmistakable FBI insignia emblazoned on its side became visible. The onlookers' whispers turned into hushed gasps. The car door opened, and out stepped a man in a tailored dark suit. His movements were purposeful, his expression serious as his gaze locked onto Elena. Agent Carter, he said with a respectful nod. Is everything all right? It is now, Elena replied, shifting her focus from Mitchell to her colleague. But I'll need you to document this incident. Officer Mitchell here decided to confront me without cause. And something tells me this isn't the first time he's overstepped his authority. The agent's jaw tightened as he turned his attention to Mitchell. Officer, he said, his voice firm and controlled, your actions today were completely inappropriate. Misusing your authority, especially against a federal agent, is unacceptable. There will be consequences. Mitchell's mouth went dry. His pulse pounded in his ears. He wanted to speak, to justify himself, to salvage whatever dignity he had left. But the words refused to come. The crowd, now larger than before, murmured with growing intensity. He's done for. That's what happens when you abuse power. Serves him right. Someone clapped softly. Others nodded in approval. Mitchell could feel the walls closing in. His career, the authority he had clung to so tightly, was slipping through his fingers. Elena turned back to him, her expression unreadable but her voice low and cutting. You let your bias guide your actions today, officer, and it's going to cost you. She paused, letting the words sink in. Next time, it won't just be your badge at stake. It'll be your freedom. A cold dread settled in Mitchell's stomach. With that, Elena turned on her heel and walked away, her colleague following close behind. The crowd parted as she passed, some offering her quiet nods of respect, others still capturing the moment on their phones. Mitchell remained standing, frozen in place, his face burning with shame. By the end of the day, the video of the encounter had gone viral. Social media erupted in outrage. News outlets picked up the story. Hashtags demanding accountability trended within hours. The police department, unable to ignore the overwhelming public backlash, issued a statement announcing that Officer Mitchell had been placed on indefinite suspension pending a full investigation. As for Elena Carter, she returned to work, unfazed. For her, this was just another day in a career filled with challenges. She had faced far worse, dealt with bigger threats. But for everyone who had watched that video, she became something more. She became a symbol of strength, of resilience, of the unwavering demand for justice. A reminder that no badge, no uniform, and no false sense of authority could ever justify the abuse of power, and that true justice would always prevail.